And now it's time to talk about active reading. We've already talked about active listening, so here we're going to go on to active reading. Active reading. If you're reading your textbooks in the same manner, the same fashion that you're reading your fiction books, you're wasting an awful lot of time. Your textbooks were not written to be read word for word. No author, no publisher, no instructor expects you to read those textbooks word for word. Textbooks were designed to be read with a reading system. And I want to talk about two different reading systems, because these reading systems allow you to read a large amount of material in a short amount of time. You know, your instructor assigned you 6 chapters to read by Monday. With a reading system, you can do it. So here's the first reading system. It's called the 5-part reading system. All the parts begin with P. It's easy for me to remember if I say the 5-part reading system. The first part of the 5-part reading system is to prepare. That's, to prepare yourself physically to read. Have your paper and pencil there. Typically when I'm preparing to read my fiction book, it's sit back in the chair, put my feet up, put a pillow on my lap so I can rest the book on the pillow, have a beverage, have a snack, have a cat brush, because sooner or later a cat's going to jump up on my lap. Brush it a few times and it jumps back down. When I'm preparing to study something, it's usually sit at the dining room table or sit at my desk, have my beverage, my snack, my cat brush, my paper and pencil, all the stuff I'm going to take notes in, to physically prepare and to mentally prepare, to psych yourself up that, for the next 20 minutes I am going to concentrate, I am going to read this. So prepare yourself mentally and physically. The second area is to preview. Preview begins by reading stuff you don't typically read. Start out by reading that table of contents. Most of us just skip over the table of contents, but lots of really good, easy to read information in that table of contents. Once you have the table of contents read, go right back to the glossary at the end of the book. Every main idea that author wants to get across to you is in a key word in that glossary. You might have a 900-page textbook, but that glossary is 7 or 8 pages long. You read those 7 or 8 pages, you know every main idea that author wants to get across to you. If you can put those ideas in order because you've just read the table of contents, then you know every main idea and the order that it's going through. The next area for preview is just to flick through page by page of the section that you're going to read, looking at all the headings, the diagrams, the charts. This gets your mind ready to absorb that information. Then once you've previewed the material, now it comes time for predicting questions. Predicting questions is where you ask yourself, why am I reading this? And the answer to that question is not, I have to for class. If you ask yourself, why am I reading this, and the only answer you come up with is, I have to for class, chances are you will not retain that information. By predict questions, what I mean is, look at all those headings and change those headings into questions with who, what, where, when, why, how, and change those headings into questions, and then you read just enough to answer those questions. In most textbooks, in the first 2 paragraphs, right underneath the heading, the author explains that concept. If you can answer your question, if you can understand the concept in those first 2 paragraphs, you don't need to read all the other stuff. The other stuff is fluff. It's examples. It's more explanation of that idea. Don't read that other stuff if you understand it from those first 2 paragraphs. And ask a question and read enough to answer the question. And as you're reading, pick out the key words. Remember, those key words are all of the main ideas the author wants to get across to you. As you're reading along, you come across those key words, you understand those key words, then keep reading. But if you don't understand those key words, don't try and figure out what they mean by the context of the sentence. The author has a very, very specific meaning. So if you come across those key words and you don't know what those key words mean, stop reading, go directly right back to the glossary, look up that key word, find out what that key word is, and then go back and start reading. You want to use the definition that the author wants, not the definition you're kind of sort of figuring out. And the last step on the 5-part reading system is to paraphrase. This is where you say out loud. Remember that out loud part. You say out loud in your own words what you just read. It doesn't count to say in your head. Every so often stop, put your hand in the book, close the book, and say, I just read about the 5-part reading system. The 5-part reading system has 5 parts. The first part is to prepare. It means prepare myself mentally and physically. The second part is to preview. It means to read the table of contents, read the glossary, flip through page by page, look at all the headings, diagrams, charts, so I can get my mind set for reading this stuff. To predict questions, to use who, what, where, when, why, how, and change those headings into questions and read enough to answer my questions. The fourth part is to pick out those key words. Every main idea that the author wants to get across is in a key word in that book. I understand the key words, I understand those main ideas. And finally, to paraphrase, which is to say out loud in my own words what I just read, which is what I'm doing now. Open the book, look at it, I got it right, great, go on to the next section. Now this is the reading system that I use, and this is the reading system that I recommend. But there's another 5-part reading system, just in case you don't like this one. It's called the SQ3R system. The S stands for survey. Survey is the same as a preview. Read the table of contents, read the glossary, flick through page by page, looking at all the headings, diagrams, charts. To question, change those headings into questions with who, what, where, when, why, how, so that you read with a purpose. And the first R is to read. Read enough to answer those questions. Usually the first 2 paragraphs is all you need to really understand those questions. Then to recite, to say out loud in your own words what you just read, the same as the paraphrase in the previous one. And finally, to review. This is what I really do like about this system, is that maybe a day after or 2 days after, you go back, look at those headings. Can you say out loud what those headings are? You review the stuff. You bring it back into your memory with every review you have. Either of these 2 reading systems works very, very well. Remember that those textbooks were not written to be read word for word. The textbooks were written to be read with a reading system. So either the SQ3R system or the 5-part reading system works very, very well for this. And since I use it, I recommend the 5-part reading system.